So, thanks everyone for coming. Without the fans, we wouldn't have a band. So this topic, I'm going to take the conversation to perhaps more of a cybersecurity management system at a program level. And in my daily role as a advisory consultant for organizations, OT, IT organizations, I tend to talk to CISOs and cybersecurity group managers and whatnot. Do we have any CISOs in the room right now? Well, I'm not going to turn you into one. But if you are ever going to be bringing, perhaps you're influencing the solutions that are going into your organizations, these are some of the thoughts that perhaps you might want to do to try and get the budgets. And so, again, when you're dealing with large organizations, there's quite a few factors that go into which tools are we going to buy, and can we then support them throughout their life cycle moving on. In my credentials, you can see I've got some IT and OT credentials. Doing the IT for more than 20 years, the OT and manufacturing stuff for just the last 5. So this deck, I built this deck myself, so you're going to see some cheesy transitions and things like that. My marketing department had nothing to do with it. But so I was recently talking to the head of security for a large multinational power generation company, and he was less interested in the solutions that we can provide from, risk assessment through to improvement plan and solution development deployment, and more interested in how are you going to drive this message up through my business and actually get the budget. And so I talked about a few of these different things, and it's kind of 9 easy steps to getting a budget, and then this last one here is continual improvement. But I could tell that he was not convinced that we would ever get his organization to go anywhere with the thoughts. So I'm not going to read each of these to you because I do have a little bit of conversation on each of these topics. But the first thing that you need to do is you need to make sure that you know what it is that you're trying to put your arms around. You need to be able to understand the scope of your organization to then be able to understand what potential security requirements you might have. And that what I'm going to do, a lot of what we do is we have to justify, these budgets and whatnot. And oftentimes I refer to the individual citations and whatnot through the different international standards. And so you'll see a lot of those citations as we go through here. But first thing we need to do is understand what your infrastructure is, look at the vulnerabilities to that infrastructure, and then the associated risks. And so that all makes sense, because what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're putting in security solutions that address some risk. And perhaps my biggest risk, my most important risk. So these solutions want to also be prioritized as well. And then when we identify, perhaps we're trying to meet a certain standard and we've identified these vulnerabilities and gaps, then what we're creating is a prioritized, actionable risk treatment plan with an improvement plan and some projects behind that. So once you've identified kind of this, and those citations rather, the ISO 27001, this section 421, 422, 423 is really talking about the scope of your organization and understanding that. And then down here in the 10.2, this is where up in 6 we actually talk about a risk management program, but I thought the more impactful statement here was 10.1, where we're implementing those risk treatments, and it's talking about when planning for a security management system, the organization shall consider the issues referred to in the scoping section. And anytime you see these words shall, It means that you as an organization need to do it. Those are the types of words that you bring to your steering committee when you're trying to get budget. So there's different ways and platforms and things like that that you can, once you identified your assets and looking at your vulnerabilities and doing a risk assessment. I see some folks working in spreadsheets, some folks working in tools that have a nice dashboard and things like that. This here is from SecurityGate.io, one of the tools that I've been known to use. I've been known to use others. But I think really what we're trying to do is look at where do we want to invest our money. And so this is a statement from the NCSC regarding getting your cybersecurity budget. And it says that every organization has to make an investment decision about how to protect their technology and services, but every organization is unique. So there's not one solution fits all. Whether you've got a fancy tool with the dashboard or you're working in spreadsheets really doesn't matter. It's the goal you're trying to achieve. Obviously, I try and drive people towards tools because it's easier to, as you implement improvements in your environment, you can track those changes, you can make assignments and things like that. So the next thing you want to do is you want to align to some sort of internationally recognized standard. So more recently, in 2018, the NIS regulation came out governing all of the operators of essential services, the OESs out there. And so that has to do with, for instance, power generation and how much power are you generating or how many people do you serve or within that community. There are other, obviously, operators of essential services as well, such as transportation, and now they've recently added public media outlets as well. So there's different standards that you might pick. So a couple that I frequently use is the ISO 27000 X governance, obviously. And then in my operational technology hats, 62443 is a really common set of standards as well. What's interesting is they both kind of cover the same controls. It's just that these folks are worried about confidentiality, integrity, and availability, while these folks are prioritizing availability, integrity, and confidentiality. Same set of controls, but just different priorities. So that, I think, is the important thing, is when we're trying to get these budgets and get the justification and get them in front of our steering committees and CISOs, it's all based on best practices. I didn't dream this up. I'm not just looking at this new cool shiny tool or had some sales guy take me out for golf, which I would take you out if you. Anyways, so the next thing is building the business case. So this sounds like a no-brainer, but do we have any consultants in the room? So this whole conversation for consultants, all this happens before we call you, but before the end user gets you on site. But ultimately, when the consultants are on site, this is really what you are trying to address. You're trying to address the way back from the start, the business case, to say that this is why I'm here and this is what I'm going to do for you effectively. So we want to make sure that we have that the organization understands why to invest in cybersecurity, because to be frank, it's similar to an insurance plan that ideally you don't want to use it, but if you don't use it, then perhaps you don't see the value in it ever. I will say, to understand the potential risks for financial implications, perhaps reputation, business loss, things like that. When I'm talking about risks here, when we're looking at the business case, this is a different risk assessment than we did previously. That risk assessment was looking at what we're trying to do as an organization and the cybersecurity controls we're implementing. This is a risk to the actual business and the brand and whether or not we'll be able to open the doors tomorrow because we have no customers left. And then be ready to prepare a compelling story to your CISOs or steering committees. But what I'm not excellent graphics or anything, but what I put there is the X over the word FUD, and that's fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Never lead with fear, uncertainty, and doubt and say, we got to do this, otherwise we're going to get hacked and ransomware and all of these things. It may be true, but that's not what's going to get CISOs to give you the money. What they need to know is that you are aligning with the organizational goals, right? We as an organization are trying to optimize our operations by integrating with some of our IT folks. We're trying to get a centralized SOC going. We're trying to move these resources up into the cloud so that all of our offices can lower their costs in communicating to the apps or whatever those organizational goals are. This is where you're saying that security is a business driver, and you can kind of say that this is going to make not only us more secure, but it's actually going to help us do what we're trying to do. If you can articulate that in a story, then you're much more likely to get the budget that you're after. So this one here, collaborating with other departments, I think it makes sense that you do that, because ultimately, if you can pool your resources and get a single solution that everyone's happy with, then you have a better business case. But in reality, it's funny, coming from a power generation customer base right now, they say, there's no silos. Well, there are physical silos there, and there are all these organizational silos as well. The OT guys don't like the IT guys, and group, they're running, this IDS, and we don't want to run that IDS. We want to do our own makeup and choose our own platforms and things like that. But in reality, if you had these different individual sites and businesses under groups all agree on something, then they could centralize a SOC, and you could kind of forget about the operation of it. I mean, there's definitely benefits of trying to reach out to different organizations. And here I've got more of an IT type of an example with IT, finance, legal, just standard business, IT, finance, legal, compliance, and whatnot. But just the more that the organization as a whole agrees with what it is you're trying to do, and again, this goes back to identified risks and your risk treatment plan that's in a prioritized, actionable risk treatment improvement plan, is the more people who agree with the elements of that improvement plan, the better off. And where I have compliance here, I'm talking about perhaps your internal auditors or even your external auditors. That's one thing that can really drive a cyber security solution forward, is if you can say, and I can just hit print on this thing and give it to the auditors and they'll go away. That is a compelling case for whatever that solution is. We do need to make sure that they understand that cybersecurity is an organizational thing. And when we're bringing these things in, there are organizational roles and responsibilities that come with it. There's not just, this software is going to just fix everything. And I'll get a little bit into that more here in a couple minutes. But and then seek the support and involvement of multiple groups to collaborate together, to pull together and get the resources. So, highlight emerging threats and trends. Again, I'm going to go back to my statement earlier to say that we don't want to use fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but you can't walk around with blinders on either. You really need to know what are the internal and external threats to my business, and how can I qualify these so I can start quantifying what the appropriate security mitigation controls are for it. Now, So I need some help here. I don't have the number, but does anyone know how many how many companies Forrester said in their recent report on threat intelligence are selling a threat intelligence product? They reckon 40. There's 40 different, and you're thinking about Mandiant and all these companies who say that, we've got a threat intelligence labs, and we'll sell you threat intelligence. And so, which one of those 40 should you choose? It can get confusing. So there's a lot of different options out there. There are some that are more tailored to individual industries. There are others that you can tailor to your industry, which is interesting as well. So let's say if you're in finance, what's most interesting to you is threat intelligence for finance. What type of attacks are hitting my sector right now? And some of the tools you can use to actually tweak it to give you what's most relevant to you and your organization. But yeah, the Annex A, this is where we're talking about what the specific definitions of the individual controls are. It's talking about information regarding information security threats that should be collected and analyzed to produce threat intelligence. There's two places that this can happen. One is internally. So earlier I was in a discussion about network monitoring, and there was a young lady who works in the head of a SOC. Definitely, that's the first stop for threat intelligence. What's happening right now on my assets, on my boundaries, on my web application firewalls and things like that. But that gives you kind of a small picture. It is through the external threat research contracts or agreements that you have that you'll actually get the bigger picture and, again, try and narrow that down to what's relevant ideally to your industry or the types of services you're running and things like that. So starting with smaller initiatives is a way to get some budget, and it can work. And so I've got a road with a number of switchbacks here, and you can just say, if we can get to here and show success, then we can get and move the project to here. And to me, that actually aligns with the way that project managers build their improvement plans. So you've got a number of different swim lanes. So let's say your risk assessment, high-level risk assessment against the organization had 56 findings in it. And of those findings, they were able to align those with 7 projects and put that into a large improvement plan. Each of those projects could be individually funded, and if we can continue to show improvement and success, not only will we get perhaps more trust from our board of directors that we're actually being successful at getting this done, but also if you are a regulated company and you are being audited, those continual improvement, or those not continual, but smaller step improvements are what they're looking for. They're not looking to say, next time we come back, you better have all this done. They want to see that you've got a plan and you're working towards it. And so this is, again, a good way to get additional funding, but only if you are in the trust of your steering committee that you're successful in getting these things done. Now, when we quantify the budget requirements, this is where, and at the beginning of the conversation, I said we're going to be up at the cybersecurity management system area. This is where you really have to understand all of the elements of the cybersecurity management system. So we have certainly got tools, and that's the cool thing you want to have on a dashboard. But the other thing that you want is you want to have either you or someone else be able to look at it and have time to do that. And then you also want to have the resources for perhaps upgrades and things like this. So we talk about cybersecurity management programs as being a life cycle type thing. It's not, we got that stuff installed and we're super stoked. We need to understand what are the costs to the organization, not only for the hardware and the software, but also the people and the processes behind it to keep this thing up and running. So I work with a number of different organizations in cybersecurity consulting, and I manage a team of consultants that do technical delivery services, and they will go out one week and install a real-time vulnerability management system to a power company, we'll say, and that system includes asset identification, change management to the systems, IDS, and a number of controls to effectively see not only what do we have going on, but what are the threats and the attempts to exploit vulnerabilities and all of that. And so they put this into a client's environment, and then nothing happens. Like, they don't tune it, and it just sits there building alerts and building alerts and building alerts. And there is a risk to your financial risk to your organization by something called shelfware, meaning we bought something and it's never been deployed, it's on a shelf. There's a much larger risk to buying security controls and putting them in place and then never looking at the audits and the logs and the alerts and all the things that come out of it. Because now what you have is this false sense of security. The CISO is walking around, yeah, we got an IDS, we're good, but nobody's looking at these things, right? And so one of the services that my company's rolled out is managed monitoring, because I know I'm dealing with a lot of electrical engineers who have no time or interest to look at all of the alerts and logs and things like that that come out of it. So really, when you're trying to get this budget, you need to understand the life cycle of that thing. And not only do we need to get the hardware and the licenses to get it in place, but it has to be managed. Otherwise, it's actually probably lowering our security posture, because we believe we're doing better than we are. So another citation here for the budget, leadership responsibilities, 5.1c, is ensuring the resources needed for the information security management system are available. It is the executive's job. They shall do that. So, and then, so you've done all, you did the last 8 steps, you figured out, how does this improve our business? How do we align with what our business goals are? Do we have all the elements of the cybersecurity life cycle considered when we're putting our budget together? Do we have the improvement plan in place that's iterative, but something we can do in stages? And can we clearly articulate all of this? If you can, then you bring these to your steering committee or the CISO, whatever. You present what you've got, and you do so in such a way that it's clearly articulated, but it's not obviously overly techy and things like that. And one thing that I say when we're doing this, and it could be a pain in the ass, but it could also get your budget approved quicker, is give them more than one option. Give them, say, here's the high cost solution for our problem. Here's the medium cost and the low cost. The one I recommend, medium or high, probably not the low. But when you want them to realize that if you give someone options, you empower them to make a decision. If you come and say, hey guys, we need to fix this, here's the proposal we got to do it, they can sit and think about that and analysis paralysis for quite some time. So then last thing is continual improvement. Monitor your tools. Make sure your tools are working for you the way you want. That's the way you're going to get the continual life cycle budget and whatnot. And so you should have some way of measuring that you're successful. So just I know how difficult this is because working with CISOs and heads of security every day. But just you need to be persistent, effective communication, and understand the context of the organization. That was slide number 1 here. What am I trying to secure? And then you can increase your likelihood. If you've done those steps, you'll increase your likelihood of getting the budget and strengthen your organization's security posture. We have time for questions. Yes, sir.
Could you quick go back to the quantify the budget requirements?
Yes, sir. Oh, well, maybe not so quick. Go, go, go.
All those transitions.
Yes, sir.
I think that is one of our biggest problems, is the install tools. They spent all the money on the shiny new thing, hardware to put it on, software licensing. We've had X many days of training, and then it sits there and gets patched, it gets tuned, it doesn't prove its value, so they move on to the next shiny new toy that promises to deliver what that one did, and the cycle repeats.
And you don't even get the next one because you're not seeing the value out of the last one.
I know, but they go to the golf course and have the lunches and buy it anyway.
And what I'm saying is it's realizing that the life cycle is it's not just the hardware and software, it's the people and the processes to support that.
That seems to be one of our hardest things to do, is to actually get the value out of the tool, as promised. You get a few small features, and then you look at this next shiny tool and go, this already does that. We just haven't ever used it. We've not leveraged what we've already bought.
And that's what I'm saying. We need to have an actionable improvement plan that we can get these things deployed. It's all part of a larger program now. And you know those next tools are coming because you've got a big old dashboard of your improvement plan. And yeah, we got this one deployed, but we can't just lose sight because we're moving into the next one. It's got to be life cycle. But I suspect everyone in this room struggles with this. So, I think, guys, we've got Lisa downstairs, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Or is it just over
Downstairs.
Yeah. So I don't want to take up any of her valuable oxygen.